During the Gilded Age 1870s to 1900s, when poor working conditions and long workdays had a negative effect on people's health and well-being, 2,500 people gathered at Haymarket Square on May 4, 1886 in Chicago, Illinois to protest against the tragedy of poor working conditions demanding better. This protest turned to chaos when an onlooker threw a bomb into the crowd and killed 8 civilians and wounded numerous others. The protests were triumphant when their 8-hour workday demand was finally enforced. Labor history was changed forever with this new law, but relationships between employers and workers became tense, with each person having different views about their work. As factories were beginning to be built during the Industrial Revolution and the Gilded Age, these new businesses were in need of workers. Employers could set wages as low as they wanted because they knew people were willing to do any type of work as long as they got paid. Men and women worked 14 to 16 hours a day. The men earned 10 cents per hour, $89 per week, but the women got only 1/3 to 1/2 the pay that the men got. The machines and the work methods the laborers used were dangerous, and many injuries and fatalities occurred. A well-known example of a disaster that occurred due to the conditions inside of a factory is the Triangle Street Oil factory fire. Fabric inside of the sweatshop caught fire and the fire tore through the building. There were no fire escapes and all of the doors were locked, so the workers were trapped inside. Many burned to their death and others jumped from the 8th floor to their death. A total of 145 people died. Men and women were not the only ones who worked as laborers. Children also worked 14-hour days and were paid less than 10 cents an hour. The children were more nimble and had smaller hands than the adults, so they could do tasks that the adults couldn't. In 1819, Surgeon Michael Ward said, accidents were very often admitted to the infirmary, due to the children's hands and arms having been caught in machinery. In many instances, the muscles and the skin is stripped down on the bone, and in some instances, a finger or two might be lost. The laborers' suffering did not end when they left their workplace. Many workers migrated from place to place in search of any jobs or any sort of pay. The laborers lived in slums. According to Ankar Porter from IndustrialRevolution.com, 5 to 9 people lived in a single room, which was as big as an apartment. Not only was there not enough room, but more people got sick as well. Because everyone lived in terrible conditions and so close to one another, diseases spread rapidly and lack of medicine and medical care resulted in many deaths. As time went on, population in the cities increased, people searching for jobs, which led to the slums becoming more crowded and in worse condition. In 1886, the now defunct National Labor Union asked Congress to pass a law mandating an 8-hour workday. Their efforts failed. However, it helped to make labor reform a national topic. A year later, on May 1, 1867, Illinois was the first state to pass an 8-hour workday law. However, they included a loophole that allowed employers to contract with their employees for longer hours. Laborers didn't like the loophole and chose to strike. This strike lasted for almost a week and ended with no change to the law. Employers took full advantage of the loophole and forced the employees to sign waivers or else they would lose their job, which left little change in the working hours. Almost 20 years later, with still no change in labor laws, workers had had enough. The unions chose May 1, 1886 as the day for the 8-hour workday law to be implemented. They started protests on May 1st and planned to continue them until the employers and the government agreed to enforce the law. A protest held on May 3rd at the McCormick Reaper plant and another protest on May 4th at Haymarket Square brought non-stop violence from police who had had enough of the laborers' protests. At the meeting in Haymarket Square, the people wanted to protest against police brutality at the McCormick Reaper plant and to continue their demand for an 8-hour workday and better working conditions. On the day of the Haymarket meeting, flyers were printed in a print shop run by Albert Parsons and were handed out to people to promote the meeting. An employee of the print shop had met with the mayor of Chicago, and both men had agreed that the meeting was to be a non-violent, quiet type of meeting. That evening, 2,500 people gathered in Haymarket Square instead of the expected 20,000 people. According to William J. Edelman from Illinois Labor History Society, he said, the Haymarket meeting was almost over, and only about 200 people remained when they were attacked by 176 policemen carrying Winchester repeater rifles. As this was happening, an unidentified person threw a handmade bomb to the crowd of people. William J. Edelman also said it was the first dynamite bomb ever used in peacetime history of the United States. After the bomb was thrown, police panicked and started shooting, and ended up shooting many of their own men in the darkness. 7 policemen died, and only 1 death was due to the bomb. 4 workers were also killed and dozens of others were wounded. The police had had enough of the laborers' continued protests. They arrested 8 men: August Pease, 31, Albert Parsons, 37, Louis Link, 21, Adolf Fischer, 27, George Engel, 50, Oscar Neebe, 35, Samuel Phelan, 39, and Michael Schwab, 32, in Haymarket Square that night and summoned them to court. The men were anarchists and played a large role in the labor movement, which was the main reason for their arrest. Only 2 of the men, Samuel Phelan and Michael Schwab, were present at the Haymarket meeting. The trial began on July 16, 1886. The Chicago Tribune, one of the most read newspapers in Chicago, offered to pay money to the jury who found the 8 men guilty. The trial was 2 months long and ranks as one of the most notorious events in American history. On August 19, 1886, the men were found guilty and 7 were sentenced to death by hanging. The 8th man, Oscar Neebe, was given 15 years of hard labor. After the men were convicted, they appealed the verdict to the State Supreme Court of Illinois. On September 14, 1887, the Illinois State Supreme Court rejected the appeal and upheld the lower court's ruling. The defendants appealed again, this time to the United States Supreme Court. However, in November that same year, it was denied. The men then made a last-ditch clemency effort to the governor. Several famous writers voiced criticism of the trial and urged mercy. A former Illinois U.S. Senator and various Chicago civic leaders urged the governor to grant at least some of the convicted men mercy. Finally, on November 10, 1887, the sentences for Samuel Phelan and Michael Schwab, who requested mercy in writing, had the sentences reduced to life in prison. The others were sent to die as scheduled. On the night before his scheduled execution, Louis Link smuggled a dynamite caps into his cell, put them into his mouth, and committed suicide. On November 11, 1887, George Engel, Adolf Fischer, August Pease, and Albert Parsons were executed. On June 26, 1893, Illinois Governor John P. Alcott pardoned Neebe, Schwab, and Phelan in order to right what he thought was a judicial wrong. After the Haymarket riot, relations between workers and business owners became more tense than they'd been, with each side feeling at war with the other. An incident that occurred between employers and workers was the Pullman strike. The Pullman strike happened in Chicago, Illinois in 1894. Workers at the Pullman Palace Car Company received a pay cut for the 5th time from their employer. The workers went on strike in May of 1894. When they went on strike, they asked for and received support from the American Railway Union. Together, the striking workers shut down numerous railway lines. However, a U.S. District Court judge in Chicago ordered the workers to stop interfering with the operation of the railroads. U.S. President Grover Cleveland sent federal troops to Chicago to enforce the judge's order. When the troops arrived in Chicago on July 4th, riots broke out. The troops struggled to take control over the people. 30 workers were killed and dozens more were wounded and several hundred were arrested. The Pullman strike was ended and so was the American Railway Union. The American Federation of Labor was formed in December of 1886. It was the less radical group of labor workers who also wanted to fight to protect the rights of workers. In July 1889, at a labor conference in Paris, France, a delegate from this organization recommended that May 1st be recognized as International Labor Day in memory of the Haymarket martyrs and the injustices of the Haymarket riot. Since that conference, it is referred to as May Day or International Workers' Day, and this day celebrates workers' rights. Most of the world celebrates this day on May 1st with demonstrations, commemorations, and vacations for the working class. However, the United States does not. When the U.S. began to seriously consider an official workers' holiday, officials were divided on whether to honor the movement's origins on this day or distance themselves from because of its violent associations. President Grover Cleveland was worried about the political threat of anarchists and socialists and also felt a May 1st labor holiday would become a memorial to the Haymarket bombing. However, he did want to honor and celebrate the American workers, so in 1894, he proclaimed the first Monday in September as Labor Day. Radicals occasionally tried to revive May Day, but most U.S. unions, like those in the American Federation of Labor, did not agree. 52 years after the Haymarket riot in 1938, the New Deal's Fair Labor Standards Act finally made the 8-hour workday illegal throughout the nation. To honor the men who were executed for their alleged roles in the Haymarket bombing, the Haymarket Martyrs Monument was built in Forest Home Cemetery in Chicago, where most of the executed men are buried. Etched to the bottom of the monument are the final words of August Pease. The day will come when our silence is more powerful than the voices you are throttling today. These words will forever remind people of the tragedy that is the Haymarket riot and the injustice that the Haymarket 8 endured.